House of Commons right now to discuss the situation. James Bezan, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence, the NDP's defence critic Jack Harrison, the Liberal defence critic Joyce Murray. Mr. Bezan, many of the ships carrying migrants are coming from Libya. The migrant issue is only one of the problems that country is facing. It's essentially a failed state now. Does Canada, as part of the NATO mission, looking back, does it bear some responsibility for the migrant situation, given the fact that, we ended the mission back in 2011?
Well, first of all, I want to express our condolences to everyone that's been impacted by this tragedy. It is terrible what's happened. We are very supportive of the European Union and their relief organizations, and Coast Guard as they continue to try to deal with this situation. Definitely, in my opinion, the individuals that are responsible for organizing these ships now are turning into essentially floating tubs of dead people. We just saw what happened with these people being locked in the hull. We need to make sure those people are held responsible. But I can tell you that we had engaged there, as you pointed out, to get rid of Omar Gaddafi and his brutal regime. We are under no illusions that this was going to be a tough transition, and we'll work with the governments there to try to find a solution, and work with the UN, both from the humanitarian side as well as from trying to find solutions to deal with this on a long-term basis.
I mean, but you wonder if there was sort of a mission accomplished issue, as you remember George Bush had that mission accomplished sign. Let me just take you back to this is Stephen Harper, 2011 on Libya. Here's what he said about the mission, given what we're seeing today. Check this out.
Today is special because we are celebrating a great military success. The success of Canada's participation in Operation Unified Protector and Operation Mobile, respectively, the NATO mission in Libya and Canada's contribution to it.
There's $1 million flyover of Parliament, Mr. Bezan, a big ceremony. How can we call a mission a success if years later the country has descended into chaos, and as you say, migrants are literally floating in boats and they're dying in the hundreds and hundreds? To get out of that country, was that a success? And what is Canada's responsibility after that bombing?
Well, from a military standpoint, it was successful, and we're proud of our brave men and women who served in both Air Force and Navy in that campaign. But we are under no illusions, and as Prime Minister Harper has said, that the transition was going to be extremely difficult. And we'll work with all our international partners to find it. But let's keep in mind, what's happening there right now is that we have ISIS is spreading their terror throughout the region.
But how did we? I mean, it's one thing to say we'll work with them, it's a difficult transition. But Charlie Bouchard, the Canadian general who led that NATO mission, has been on this program and said we got out too early. The whole lesson of Libya was you bomb it, and again, it goes back to Colin Powell, the famous Pottery Barn. You break it, you bought it. You go in and bomb someone. You remember, there was mission evolution creep, whatever you want to call it. We weren't supposed to kill Gaddafi. We did kill Gaddafi. Regime change. Now look at it. Again, do we have a responsibility to get in there?
Okay, ultimately, we want to work with responsible individuals and responsible organizations in Libya to find solutions. We'll step up and do that as those opportunities present themselves, and we'll work with the international community, particularly with the United Nations, to try to find solutions. But let's also not forget that we have to deal with ISIL and where they're targeting their efforts and where they're launching these efforts from and where their source of power is, which is in Syria.
All right, Jack Harris, you want to jump in? What's your take on the lessons of Libya?
Well, the lessons of Libya, I think, are fairly obvious. I mean, when James Bezan states the mission is to get rid of this dictator Gaddafi, well, that wasn't the mission. The mission was the responsibility to protect his citizens from him in Benghazi area. That was what it was about. We supported that effort, and the effort was supposed to also build a coalition to re-govern Libya and not leave it in a failed state as it is now. I've said this before, it's perhaps an oversimplification. The operation was a success, but the patient died, and we left left Libya as it is. We were in 2011 saying we've got to have a robust effort to disarm all these people who've been armed to participate in this civil war. The mission creep, we supported the mission. We supported an extension of the mission when it was about responsibility to protect. When it went way haywire over that, rhetoric is cheap, but Gaddafi was a bad guy. There's no doubt about that. But he was the friend of the West. He was the friend of Tony Blair. He was the friend of Bush and the Americans when it
But I guess the question to the NDP is, do hypocrisies or ironies prevent you from acting?
We have a responsibility, but we have a responsibility, and we bear that responsibility, and we're seeing the consequences of that responsibility now. Can we fix it by having another bombing campaign in Libya? I'm not so sure. That doesn't seem to be.
But the challenge for the NDP,
is that going to be effective?
But the challenge for the NDP is when you get ISIS this weekend releasing a video of Ethiopian Christians being killed in Syria, a similar video of Coptic Christians in February in Egypt.
And you got hundreds of thousands of Ethiopians and Somalians leaving their countries, going through Libya to get to Italy.
Do you have does the NDP? I know you're talking about humanitarian, but is there a responsibility to stop the killing?
Well, the NDP doesn't have a plan to fix the world, frankly, and I don't think that neither the Conservatives or the Liberals. But what we see there, the Europeans are stepping up with a 10-point plan. They're working together. The Egyptians, who are the next-door neighbors there to Libya, who have a direct interest in this, and the Saudi Arabia, they're trying to start working together to build a coalition to try and stop that. They're the only people who can actually add stability to that region. I don't think we can, from Canada, by going over there and lobbing bombs into the situation, solve that problem. We've proven in the past that we can't provide a sustained stability, whether it be in Iraq, whether it be in Libya, whether it be in Afghanistan. We've still got those problems with the Pakistanis helping the Taliban into Afghanistan today. We can't solve all those problems by just dropping bombs, and we've got to work the diplomatic circuit. We've got to be engaged. We can't just walk away from these efforts, and we've got to continue.
Let me bring in Joyce Murray. What's Canada's responsibility when we see this horrific situation? And we're looking at the pictures. These migrants from places like Libya, North Africa, desperate to get to places like Italy, dying on the waters.
Well, as human beings, I think we have a moral responsibility to do our share with UN humanitarian efforts. But Evan, when you gave us that clip of Stephen Harper's enthusiastic celebration of the bombing of Libya, it really contrasted for me the difference between a Liberal government, which in the past really took seriously the roles of diplomacy, of democracy building, of foreign aid, and of course the use of the Canadian military, but not exclusively the use of the military. Under Stephen Harper, because of his trying to project an image of a warrior leader or something along those lines, the foreign aid has been cut significantly. The Foreign Affairs Department, our ability to actually conduct
but before we get too general,
cut.
what would the Liberals supported the mission in Libya. What is Canada's responsibility now? That's a failed state. People are dying to get out of there. They're afraid of ISIS. What is the responsibility now for Canada to do? What's your view?
We should be doing more in terms of humanitarian aid through the UN. We know that some of the camps where there is not enough funding to feed people become breeding grounds for more radicalization. Some of the other states in the area, Jordan, Lebanon, are very overloaded. So we need to do more than we're doing now to support the broader region and the people that have been the victims of these missions.
Right. Mr. Bezan, just last word. I mean, you hear the opposition, and they're saying the lesson of Libya, as Mr. Harris said, is that the patient may be dying. I mean, we've asked repeatedly on this program, what is the end game for the Canadian mission in a place like Syria? If you're going to bomb, what happens after? Or do you wait a couple years and then look what happens? People end up dying.
Look at both, from the Syrian standpoint, from Iraqi standpoint, and even in Libya. Ultimately, the people have to take control of their own destiny and do it in a responsible manner. So we want to be able to empower those individuals. That's why we're working so closely with the government of Iraq. How Syria
what does that
plays
mean?
out.
Just tell me. I'm just trying to, again, What are you saying? People have to take responsibility. We go in, we can bomb, we can take. I mean, we all know that the expression in foreign affairs, easy in, it's easy to get in. It's tough to get out. You're just saying we go in, we bomb, and then it's up to you to kind of put the pieces together?
You're twisting my words, Evan. What I'm saying is that in addition to what we're doing from a military standpoint, we're doing everything from a humanitarian standpoint as well, providing relief and aid, and also working in capacity building with those that are prepared to take on the governing role like we have in Iraq. Syria is a whole different ballgame, we understand that, but at the same time, we aren't going to have success in Iraq unless we address the ISIL threat in Syria as they're headquartered at Al Raqqa. The same thing with Libya. We're going to work with the Egyptians and others in the region, especially with the European Union and the United Nations, in trying to resolve this. But it's going to be more than just Canada. We're going to have to do this on an international level.
Okay, lots to come. The budget tomorrow. We'll find out what gets going to the Defense Department, and lots to dig into on that. And we're watching the situation, obviously, in the Mediterranean very closely. James Bezan, Jack Harris, Joyce Murray. I always appreciate having the three of you on the program with your perspectives on a very important situation. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Evan.